Economic analyst Steve Rattner did an excellent job this morning on MSNBC when he actually detailed in the aggregate, what the Biden economics look like, what the system produced. I want you to take a listen to this, look at this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
This is what you hear from the administration. They tout the unemployment rate coming down, more people getting into the workforce. It's a promising sign for sure. Jobs added, 15 million of them, 10% since Biden took office. Wages are finally moving up 15%. Again, another promising sign. The stock market hitting record highs and new home sales prices. Okay, this for most Americans, this is the largest asset that they'll ever own. If you owned a home when Biden took office and you still own it today, you are seeing appreciation of that asset.
That was Fox News host Sandra Smith highlighting President Biden's economic accomplishments. She did go on to point out the hardships Americans are feeling when it comes to food costs, gas, and credit card debt.
Those are the three issues that are real issues. Credit card debt, gas, groceries.
We were talking about that yesterday. But the Biden-Harris social media account seized on the moment, tweeting out the screen grab and writing, "Thanks, Fox News."
And again, Neil Cavuto's done this. Steve Ducey's done this. There are people in Fox that have done this. Brett Baer at 6 o'clock has done this as well.
Absolutely. The president is expected to tout his economic achievements in his State of the Union address. Former Treasury official and Morning Joe economic analyst Steve Rattner. Steve, what you got? Good morning.
Good morning. Well, look, I think Sandra Smith or Neil Cavuto could probably come up here and do this as well as I could. So let me at least tell you how I see all of this, because there is a lot of good news that the president should and will be talking about, I'm sure, tomorrow night. So let's start with jobs. So since Biden took office, the economy has created 410,000 new jobs a month. And yes, some of that was coming out of COVID. So if you back out COVID, 290,000 jobs per month. This is more jobs per month than any president has created in history. Even after you take out the COVID recovery, this is more jobs per month than any president has averaged in history.
In history, you mean
in history?
You're like what in the 21st century?
In like recorded history, presidential law. I don't know what happened during George Washington, but it's more jobs.
History.
Yes. Okay. There we go.
Okay.
Let's talk about the overall economy, because that job growth has fueled a lot of economic growth. 8.6% cumulative GDP growth in his first 3 years, more than Donald Trump in his first 3 years. Second only in recent history to Bill Clinton, who took office, as you'll recall, as we came out of a recession and got a bit of a bump from that. Do you want to talk about wages? We can talk about wages. Actually, let me just say one quick word about inflation. We do have to acknowledge there was inflation at the beginning of the Biden term. We were coming out of COVID.
Pretty bad.
The economy was reopening, had a bit of inflation. But look where we are now. Last year, 3.1%. That is a little bit higher than recent presidents, but in the strike zone and coming down. And looking ahead, economists expect this will be below 3% by election day. But even with a bit of inflation, Mika, to your question, let's look at what's happened to wages. So even after adjusting for inflation, the average American has 2.9% more income today than he or she had before Joe Biden took office. But what's even more interesting in a lot of ways is look where that income has been dispersed. If you were at the bottom quartile, if you were among the poorest, least well-off Americans, up 6.3%. If you're among the wealthiest Americans, up just 0.2%. And what that means is that it may not be huge, but income inequality got lower under Joe Biden.
Well, and Steve, we always talk about how it's always about trend lines. I mean, this has got to be one of the first times in the past 50 years that we've seen that sort of shift where the rich weren't getting richer and the poor weren't getting poorer.
Yes, we've had a move toward income inequality certainly going back at least 30 or 40 years. And this is one of the first times that you've started to see it narrow. That is true. And so that is another thing to be said about the Biden presidency so far.
I got that right. And what do we have next? What's your next chart going to show us, Steve?
So let's talk about economic sentiment. Look, Biden has obviously a huge amount of accomplishments besides this: the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act, Build Back Better, prescription drug prices. You could go on and on. And we all know consumer sentiment was pretty tough. And so you can see that when he took office, since he took office, consumer sentiment went down, down, down like that. This is the average. Interestingly, of course, what you think depends on where you sit. Democrats always more positive, Republicans less positive. Opposite true under Trump. But consumer sentiment bottomed back in 2022, and it has recovered pretty substantially. And so you can see on average, consumers' sentiment went up 28 points. Democrats up 25, Republicans actually up a little bit more, even though still less optimistic. And so to the question that we always talk about, why is this not in the polls? Approval rating for Biden's handling of the presidency, yes, it went down, down, down. But look over here, and I don't want to cling to small hope, but it does appear it has turned up. His approval rating on average, this is Real Clear Politics data, for his handling of the economy has gone from 40% to 47%. So many people believe there's a lag effect, that it takes a while for good news, especially about inflation, to be picked up in consumer sentiment and then to translate into better poll numbers. And maybe we're beginning to see a turn for the president here.
Now, this is important. First of all, these are the numbers and they're all in the charts. It is absolutely clear that comparatively with all other administrations, this was from an economic standpoint, as we know, economics in the United States has been a colossal success. Now, people would say we are not feeling it, or as it turns out, the inflation rate is XYZ. Look, there are two parts here: recovering from the status quo to improvement, and revolutionizing an economic system that benefits all. Every single president has been able to do is maintain the status quo and sometimes go beyond the status quo to improve the lives of some. We have constantly had a flow to economic disparity, to wealth disparity. From the inception of this country, from the inception of capitalism, because that is how that is the end stage of capitalism. If one sector grows faster than the majority sector, then you're going to get the income inequality, the wealth disparity that we see. Now, you can't judge Biden from a different book from which you judge Bush or Trump or Obama or Clinton or Reagan. Putting all of these, judging them in the same book, Biden comes out way ahead with what his economy is doing and has done to move people out of poverty, etc. And that is understood because the pandemic gave him the opportunity to use Keynesian economics as well as modern monetary theory to go ahead and bring the economy back. That is the reason why the American economy, in the aggregate, again, as I make sure to state, is doing better than every other economy, every single economy in the world. And that is the reason why we've used these economic systems. Now, that said, like we preach here all of the times, unless we make the changes necessary in our social programs, and unless we right size public versus private correctly, we will not continue to see improvement in the lower classes, the middle classes, etc., because the formula that governs our current economic system, whether it be here in the United States or Europe, all under this economic system, is designed for those who have capital to extract it from those who have little or none. That isn't a Biden's problem. That is an economic problem that we as a society have to decide to solve. And when we decide that, we will empower whichever politician is hired, is voted in to do the right thing by creating an economic system that works for all. This one doesn't, but Biden is writing it best he can to make it work for many. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.